Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, or welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Katelyn, and today we are talking all about my recent trip to Florida. So if you, again, are new here, if you just missed, I just recently in the last couple weeks got back from going to Florida with a friend, and we had such a fun time. It was such a fun trip, totally just different in so many levels from what I normally do when I go on a trip. And I just kind of wanted to just sit down and chit chat with you guys about it. I had a lot of questions about the trip, and I had a lot of people kind of like, as the vlogs came out, ask me different things and my opinions on like Universal and Halloween Horror Nights and doing Disney solo and all that kind of stuff. So I figured we would just kind of sit down, have a little chit chat about it, and kind of just answer some of your questions. So yeah, we're feeling nice and cozy today. It's a nice, cool, chilly fall day out, so I'm feeling all cozy. I wish I had a little tea or something to drink. I just have a water because I am getting over a little bit of cold. I was sick for the last week. So if I feel like, or if I sound a little nasally, that's why. When I ended up leaving my last trip, on our last day, I kind of did a little question and answer type thing on my Instagram. So I think what I'm going to do is just kind of go through those questions again and just answer them here, because I feel like a lot of people from here don't follow me on Instagram necessarily. So I feel like there might be a lot more people that kind of missed out on those questions that were asked. So we'll kind of go through those, and then I'll also just kind of touch on things as I think about them. This might be all over the place. I'm going to try my best to condense it, or section it off. But it might be a little bit all over the place. So I do apologize if that's the case. Okay, let's jump in. So first things first, let's do a quick recap overview of my trip as a whole. So this was a trip I went on with my friend Evan. For a lot of people, I think a lot of people were like, who is Evan? Why is Katelyn going on a trip with Evan and not her husband and whatever, all this stuff. So quick little overview, and maybe I should have explained this before I went on my trip. It was a quick introduction to Evan originally. So Evan and I used to work together a very long time ago when we both worked together at a retail store. I was in high school. We ended up working together, and Evan and I have known each other for basically 10 years at this point. So we have been friends for a very long time, and from a very early on stage in our friendship, we established that we both really like scary movies. Evan is a movie junkie in general. Evan is the movie encyclopedia. I always consider him as. He has over, I could be saying this wrong, but I think he has over 300 DVDs. He is the ultimate movie person. So as we, talk and get to know each other more at work, we were talking about this, and we ended up kind of relaying that we both like scary movies, and we just started being each other's scary movie person, because my husband, my sweet dear husband Austin, hates scary movies. He hates anything to do with anything scary. So I always was I never have anybody to watch a scary movie with. And so Evan used to come over to our house all the time. We used to kind of watch movies together. Austin would be hang out with Evan, watch your scary movies. I'm going to be doing my own thing. So that's always been Evan and I's friendship, where we bond over. When Evan went to, I think it was the first year that, maybe the first or second year that, no, because we had been friends for about 10 years. He's been going for about 8 years. So after a couple years of us knowing each other, Evan had gone to Universal Studios for the first time. He had went to Halloween Horror Nights at the same time. And he came back from that trip and immediately was like, you need to go to Halloween Horror Nights. And every year he used to go, and he would say to me, do you want to go? And it would never work out that we could go together, because Austin and I were always on a trip around the same time as when Evan would go. And it would never work where it was lined up where we were both there at the same time. So I could just pop over with Evan and do a horror night thing and then go back. It never worked out that way. So it always worked out where it was we couldn't align our trips. So this year, since we knew we had gone in February of 2025, Austin and I, we had planned on having a trip in December, actually, of this year, but we ended up kind of scrapping that trip because there was just other things that kind of came up and whatever. So when I knew that we weren't going to be going anytime around the fall, I had mentioned to Austin, I was like, what do you think about Evan and I doing a Horror Nights week kind of trip? And he was like, yeah, go for it. That sounds like so much fun. It's the perfect time to do it because we don't have a trip planned. Go do it. So anyways, Evan and I talked about it for a while, and it was something that really we were humming and hawing about for months and months and months. And again, I'm assuming you guys at this point are caught up, and we had booked this trip basically like 4 or 3 weeks out from when the actual trip happened. And that's when we officially like booked it, secured it, and then I obviously went on the trip. So that's the backstory of how this trip transpired. So we knew going into it that it was just like a me and Evan trip. We knew going into it that it was mostly going to be a Universal thing. But Austin was the one that mentioned when we went, I was like, I feel like it'd be hard for me to go like realistically to Florida and not go to Disney World, because Disney World is just like my favorite place. So Austin was the one that mentioned like, well, obviously you'd probably want to do, you know, a day, maybe 2 at Disney. He's like, would it be worth it for us, for you to get an annual pass and then kind of go from there? Because we knew that likely between September of 2025 until next September, we would be going on another trip. So we kind of like crunched the numbers, and we were like, okay, if I went for 2 days here, and then if I went for, you know, a week in the near future, like next year, how much would it be? And it ended up being that it would essentially cost, I think we priced it so if I did 1 day and then a week, it was going to end up being like, that's how much basically an annual pass would cost. So we said it was worth it and whatever. And obviously I ended up going for 2.5 days to Disney when we were there. And yeah, so basically that's why I ended up getting the annual pass. So from there, when Evan and I were talking about, okay, like when we're going to Universal, like what are our top priorities? So for me, the top priority was Halloween Horror Nights. I had never been to Halloween Horror Nights. That was the thing I was most excited for. It was the thing I really wanted to experience. I have been to Universal once before, but really all we did when Austin and I went to Universal, sorry, sore throat. Still a little dry. When Austin and I went to Universal, we had gone into Universal. So there's a Universal and then Islands of Adventure. We had gone into Universal. We went right back to Harry Potter. We did all the Harry Potter stuff there. We hopped on the train, the Hogwarts Express. We went over to Islands of Adventure, only did the Harry Potter stuff, hopped right back on the train and walked out of the park. So I had never really experienced Islands of Adventure, but I had experienced, you know, briefly a walkthrough of Universal Studios. So I was like, my top priority in my head was Halloween Horror Nights. And then on top of that, we knew Epic had just opened. Evan had never been. He really wanted to go to Epic. I also really wanted to go to Epic just to see what it was about. So that was like second on the list. And then third on the list was like Universal / Islands of Adventure, because that's just kind of how the tiers fell. And we knew like we would just be doing that every day anyway, so it's not really a big deal. So yeah, so that was kind of the overview of the trip. That was kind of the idea of the trip. Going in, we ended up staying at Dockside Inn and Suites, and I think what it is that's like technically like their value resort. So you could compare it to an all-star resort. However, I will say I actually preferred, I think, staying at the Dockside type of building versus like an all-stars building of Disney. A lot of my comparisons will be towards Disney because that's just what I know the best. But yeah, so with Dockside, I think there was like 2 towers. They were very large towers, so you were still walking a lot in the resort, but there was 2 main towers. And then I think Surfside, which is like across the street, it's like 1 tower. So Dockside is a little bit bigger than Surfside, but Dockside had 2 pools, which was nice. I never ended up even seeing the 1 pool because it was on the other side of the resort. So we really just did like the one side. And then, yeah, they had a really nice lobby. They had a nice big gift shop. They had a Starbucks in the lobby, which was like a huge bonus, I think. They have a huge like kind of like cafeteria style seating or like eating area in the lobby. Yeah, so I really liked staying there. I thought the price was really good. It was actually a lot cheaper to stay at any of the Universal resorts comparing to like a Disney resort. So I thought that was great. And you had transportation from your resort to the parks. Literally, it was insane how quick the buses were and how like not far the parks were from the hotel. Because if you're used to staying on a Disney property, for example, if you're staying at like a Magic Kingdom resort and you want to get all the way to Animal Kingdom, that sometimes is like a 20-minute bus ride. And for Universal, I think our longest bus ride was 8 minutes, and that was to Epic, which is like not even close, not close. I'm quoting that. Not actually close to where all the other stuff is, but for the most part, it's pretty close. So you're normally looking at like a 5-minute bus ride to like an 8, probably maybe like a 10-minute bus ride. But yeah, it was amazing. It was really cool. I really liked the way that their buses kind of ran, and you were never waiting longer than like 5 minutes for a bus. It was crazy. It was pretty good. I really liked staying on property. I thought it was worth it. I think the biggest thing for me is I think regardless, if you're like spending majority of your time at a certain type of park, so let's say it's Disney versus Universal, stay on site at where you're spending most of your time. Because I will say, for me, staying at a Universal resort and then having to take an Uber or Lyft or whatever to Disney, I hated it. I didn't like it at all. I feel like if I was with Austin, or even if like Evan came with me, I feel like I would be less stressed out about it. But because I was by myself and I'm not used to taking like a public transit by myself, or like, you know, like a ride share by myself in like not my home, I was a little bit freaked out by it. But for the most part, everything went well. Everybody was really nice. Like all my drivers were really nice. The cost wasn't terrible, I would say. I mean, it's definitely more than what you're spending when you're like staying on site and using their transportation. But I think it ended up being, I think the most I spent for an Uber was like $30 one way, which was like definitely up there in price. And this is Canadian also, by the way. So it was like $30 Canadian. But that was like at a peak hour, and that is just, it is what it is. Like the prices kind of fluctuate depending on when you're taking an Uber. So yeah, I would say depending on where you're staying and what kind of trip you're doing, like pick your resort based on like where you're going to spend your most amount of time. I would also say, I think I said this in my Epic vlog, but if you are like a Disney person and you're planning on doing a Disney trip, but you really want to do like one day at Epic, I would seriously look into, if it's feasible and if you're able to, I would seriously look into spending one day at a Universal resort just so that you get that early entry to Epic and you get the transportation to Epic from your resort. I think it was really, really worth it. I would definitely recommend doing that if you're able to. I know it's a big task to like pack up all your stuff and go, but maybe if you did like your first day was like Epic, so that way you don't have to unpack all your stuff. You're just like doing one day. You don't have to unpack your bags. You kind of do your thing, get it over with, and then on your next day you kind of transfer over to your Disney hotel or whatever. I think that would be something that's worth it to look into at least, especially if you're like debating on going to Epic, because I think the hour extra at Epic is so worth it. So let's talk about Epic, just because I kind of brought it up. So I had an amazing time at Epic. I loved it so much. If you didn't check out the vlog, go check it out. I talk a lot ad nauseum about how much I loved Epic Universe. But I thought it was great. I thought it was a great layout. I thought the extra hour that you got in the park was amazing. For when you're staying on property, you get an extra hour in the morning, which like we got to knock out so much stuff. There was a couple things that obviously like wasn't perfect with the park. Like we didn't end up getting to ride like the mine carts ride because it was saying it was going to be closed for the whole day. So we ended up doing a couple rides at the very beginning, and then like basically right when like the regular guests were allowed in, they opened up the ride. So that kind of sucked, but like that's no fault of anybody's. Like it's just like that's just how it is. Like you're never guaranteed that every ride is going to be open when you go to a park, any park. So like that. And then obviously it's a big park. There's a lot to do. We probably could have squeezed in the things that we missed. However, it's like, it is important to kind of like take a break and take a breather. And since we weren't really wanting to go back to our hotel to take a break, we were more just like, let's sit down for 45 minutes to eat a dinner or eat a lunch or something. We could have maybe kind of squeezed in other things, but we ended up missing, I think, 2 or 3 things that I wanted to do. But other than that, it was a really fun experience. I see a lot of people online saying that they're not happy with the park, that it's not something that they like. They would never go back to it again. And I think it all just depends on how your experience goes. I think like for me, I loved going. I have friends who have gone where they were like, there was a lot of hiccups. They didn't really love it. They wouldn't rush back. However, like I would be as bold as to say is I would, if it was feasible, which is not for me, but if it was feasible, I would almost say like I would want to go once a year, like tacking it on to a Disney trip. However, I would not say that about Universal. So that's kind of how I like see it. I will say for Epic, you really want to utilize mobile order. That's like really big there. I feel like I didn't use any cash while I was at Epic Universe. It was a lot of mobile ordering for food. That's one thing. Another thing is that there's not a lot of shade. So really, really, really keep hydrated. If you aren't somebody that normally brings snacks into the park, I would say like maybe bring like a granola bar or something, because there are a couple lines where you're going to be waiting a long time, and that's just like how it is right now, especially if you're going in the next like year or so. I would say it's probably going to be crazy busy and a lot of waiting. So bring some snacks to keep in your bag. Did I already say there's not a lot of shade? Yeah, not a lot of shade. Keep hydrated. Obviously wear good shoes. I would say bring a hat because again, not a lot of shade. So having a hat, I brought a baseball cap and just kept it in my purse. And then like the middle of the day I had it on my head, and I think it actually made a world of a difference for me to not overheat and get too hot. Yeah, but overall, I really, really, really loved Epic Universe. Going into for kind of like tickets and pricing and how to plan stuff. Right now, as I'm filming this, or when we went on our trip, the only way you could get the only way you could get an Epic Universe ticket was purchasing it obviously through their website, and you could only buy one ticket at a time. So you couldn't add it on to like your Universal, like I think you could do like a package where like you bought like Universal and Islands of Adventure tickets and then an Epic Universe ticket on its own, but you could only buy one day at a time. So if you wanted to do 2 days at Epic, you had to buy 2 individual days. They didn't do any type of like package to group them together to like get a deal or anything like that. So I feel like it's going to be like that for probably a little while longer. So kind of what we did was we said, okay, let's buy one ticket. And then after we go, we'll kind of decide like, okay, do we feel like we got everything that we wanted done? Do we want to do a second day? I had the intention that I would need to do a second day or would want to do a second day, but I was like, after halfway through the day, I was like, honestly, I feel like I'm fine. I don't think I'm going to need to buy a second day. I mean, it was fun and I would do it again, but I didn't need to, I didn't feel the need. But yeah, I can't remember how much the tickets cost. I'm really sorry about that. I think it was probably around $120, I think. I could be way off, but I'm assuming kind of what it was around. Moving into, let's talk about Universal. So Universal and Islands of Adventure are like the 2 parks that Universal has. They also have Volcano Bay, which is a water park. So when we were kind of pricing out tickets, Evan and I truly were just trying to figure out the cheapest way to do Universal. And now because he's like a seasoned vet, he goes every year, he's gone for the last 8 years, he kind of knew the deals to kind of look for. So what they do is for Universal specifically, they have a lot of different season passes that you can get that actually everybody's able to purchase. So for Disney, this is one thing, is that Disney has, I think, like maybe 5 tiers of seasons passes. But if you're an out-of-state person who wants to purchase an annual pass or seasons pass, you can only buy the most expensive one. Unless you're a DVC member, you can buy the one just directly below it. However, with Universal, it doesn't matter. Like you can purchase any of the passes that you want to purchase. So we got very lucky and we were able to buy the cheapest annual pass, which is called the seasonal pass, which there are tons of blockout dates on that pass. However, one of the times of not being blocked out that you could go into the park was when we went. So we decided like that ended up being cheaper. I think it ended up being even to what it would have cost to just like get regular tickets. So we said, let's just get the seasonal pass and whatever. And I said, maybe if I go back in a year, I can have that seasonal pass. I don't think I will. But I have it just in case. But the biggest benefit for us was that when we got there, the seasonal pass normally does not get any discounts for anything. You don't get discounts on food. You don't get discounts on merch. However, the month of September, which is when we were there, actually was like annual pass holder appreciation days or annual pass holder appreciation month or something like that. And for the entire month, every season pass, every annual pass got discounts on food and merch. So we ended up getting discounts on all food and merch while we were there, other than the booths at Halloween Horror Nights. Everything else we got discounts on, which I thought was amazing, because if you're an annual pass holder for Disney, they don't do discounts on quick service. You did get discounts on quick service for Universal. So I thought that was amazing. I thought that was very beneficial. So it ended up being worth it for us even more, because we ended up saving a ton of money on food, merch, souvenirs, whatever. The biggest thing was food, honestly, because I didn't buy a whole lot of like Universal souvenirs. It was more so just like the food. So it really made a big difference, which was very nice. So loved that. But yeah, so that's the passes that we ended up getting for Universal. I will say, if you're going to Universal, a lot of people were asking me, how many days do you think I need if I'm going to Universal? Like, what do you think I can do? I think a lot of it depends on the time of year that you go. However, if you're going during like not peak seasons, I would be as bold as saying, just for Universal and Islands of Adventure alone, I feel like you could get it done in like 1 to 2 days. If you're running and you are like getting everything done, I feel like you could probably dedicate a full day to it. However, if you want to just like take it a little bit easier, I would say 2 days is good. If you want to do the Hogwarts Express, which is basically the train that takes you from Universal to Islands of Adventure, you have to get a park hopper ticket, and it is a lot more expensive, I think, to get the park hopper ticket than just like a one park ticket. However, I think it's very beneficial, because each of the parks kind of is able to get like done actually kind of like halfway through your day. So you might find yourself, if you're only getting a 1-day ticket, you might find yourself being like not bored, but like trying to find things to do in either of the parks after you've done all your main attractions. So yeah, I would recommend looking into it. It is definitely like more expensive, but I think it's worth it. I also think it's really fun to do the Hogwarts Express, especially if you're a Harry Potter person. So yeah, I would say 2 days at Universal and Islands of Adventure is good. But again, it just depends on when you're going. I feel like if you're going obviously around like Christmas time, you might need more time, or like a spring break type deal. But around the time of September when we went, like 2 days would be plenty. And then, okay, let's talk about Halloween Horror Nights, because I loved Halloween Horror Nights so much. I thought it was so much fun. So when we were going ahead of time, I said to Evan, okay, what do you think we need? Like, what is the minimum amount of nights, to do for Horror Nights? And he said he thought that you can kind of power through and get a ton of stuff done in one night. However, if you're not trying to like kill yourself by like running and sprinting and like waiting in a million lines, he said it's definitely beneficial to do at least 2 days. So I said, okay, let's do 2 days. So when we looked at the tickets, it ended up being where if we did 2 days individually, it cost slightly less than if we got I think it was called the Rush of Fear Pass, which was the pass that Universal offers for you to go unlimited amount of nights in the month of, I think it was end of August to all through September. So we were able to get that pass, and we were able to, the time that we went, I think there was 6 nights that we were able to go to Halloween Horror Nights, and I thought it was so worth it. I was so happy that we got that Rush of Fear Pass, because it just made it so that every night when we went, I didn't feel like I had to stay until 2 a.m. every single night. I felt like as soon as I got like fairly tired, I was ready to just kind of be like, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is what I've done for the night. I'm content. I'm happy. I'm going to go back to the hotel and rest so that the next day I have the stamina to keep going and then do another night, So I think I ended up doing 5 nights total of Horror Nights. I think Evan did all 6 that we were there. But yeah, it was great. I really would recommend, if you're going around the same time as when I went in like September, I would recommend looking at the Rush of Fear Pass if Horror Nights is like what you want to do. And yeah, it was very fun. The other thing too is that the reason we got the seasonal pass, and instead of doing just like, oh, well, we could have done Universal, in 2 nights, and then just do like Horror Nights. If you already have a ticket and you're in the park of Universal, you can get a wristband to do, I think it's called the Stay and Scream. So you can kind of get a wristband, and then you're able to stay in the parks through where they shut down the park and then transform it kind of into Halloween Horror Nights. And that way you're able to get in lines for houses ahead of everybody else who's just like getting there at the time of when the event starts, which I think is around 6 o'clock. So we were able to get our wristbands around 3, and then we were able to kind of pick what house we wanted to go line up for. We would normally get there around 4, and then most of the houses, they all kind of were different timings, which the app will tell you like what time everything opens. But we were normally able to get like in line and start lining up around like 4:30-ish, and then some of the houses actually opened before the park even technically like, or before like Halloween Horror Nights technically even started. So I liked the way that they did that. I thought it was super, super efficient. We were able to get a ton of stuff done by doing those like stay and scream type nights. So that's why we ended up doing like the full 8 days of Universal, because we said, you know, we want to be in the park early for all those like kind of stay and scream things. And I think it was really, really, really worth it to do those little stay and scream moments. Yeah, I feel like that's everything for Horror Nights. Little things about Horror Nights I will say. So if you've never done Horror Nights before, basically I think there's 10 houses total, and at least like the one that we went to. There was 10 houses total, and a lot of the lines are more than an hour. So it is a very line heavy evening. So be prepared for that. Be prepared going to them that you know you're going to be waiting in lines. The lines are constantly moving though. So basically like as they're sending you through the house, like the Horror Night houses, or the like what are they called? Haunted houses. Anyways, as they're sending you through, like they're basically sending you through like in a conga line. So every once in a while they'll kind of give a break, and then they'll let like people go past, and then they'll kind of like, you know, they'll kind of alternate the line, because you can do the like, it's basically like a fast pass lightning lane type situation. You can pay to like skip the lines. So they obviously have to like filter those people through. So every once in a while the line will stop, but for the most part, your line's constantly moving. But you are waiting in line a lot. So just forewarning, I was not prepared for how much I was going to be waiting in line. But as long as you're going with people that you enjoy, like the lines go by fast. Like Evan and I would just like talk the whole night, and it was just like some of the lines felt like really quick. Some of the lines felt very, very long. And Evan and I will both agree there was a couple lines where we were like, this is just like we are hitting a wall just being in a line. But yeah, it's a lot of waiting. Yeah, okay. I feel like I'm just going to quickly go through the questions that I had. I'm just going to scan, because I'm just going to see if there's anything that I can quickly touch on additional. But I feel like for the most part, that's like most of the things that I was kind of asked. A few different questions. I want to try and make this video like not super long. How would you compare the food at Universal versus Disney? Cost, quality, etc. I would say Disney food is superior. I also think that the prices at Disney are actually better than the prices at Universal. I found that a lot of the Universal prices were probably around like $5 more in most cases than what like a Disney price would be. So yeah, we ended up getting a lot of discounts because we had that seasonal pass, but it's like, it would have just been like what we paid at Disney base price. So that's something. I also would say Disney has a lot more variety. There is a lot of cheeseburgers and chicken strips and pizza at Universal versus at Disney. You have a lot of options, I feel like. But yeah, that would be my biggest thing. The one thing though that I really like that Universal does that Disney does not do is that Universal has a lot of the like drink refill stations for like Coca-Cola products, but you can get water from there. So you're always able to get like ice and cold water from all those like Coca-Cola Freestyle machines, which I think Disney should pick up on. I don't know why they don't, but I think it's a great deal to do that. So you can buy the like refillable cup at Universal and you can use it in the park, which is amazing. I think it ends up being like $11 for you to like refill your cup or like reactivate your cup per day. And you can fill it up as many times as you want in the Universal parks and City Walk. So a lot of people asked actually how scary Halloween Horror Nights was. So I will say, I enjoy watching a scary movie, but I get scared. Like, I like getting scared. I think it's fun. I like the rush. I like the adrenaline that pumps through my veins. I think it's funny. I think I laugh every time. I'll get scared and then I'll like laugh. So I like that. So there's a lot of jump scares. That's like the biggest thing of Horror Nights. So if you're not a jump scare person, if that like really scares you, I would say Horror Nights is probably going to feel pretty scary to you. There's also a lot of gore. So I feel like I tried to not show a ton of the gore on like the videos that I posted, the vlogs, but there's definitely a lot of gore, and in a lot of the houses there's a lot of gore. So maybe that was just the time that we went and the themes of the houses, there was just like a lot of gory stuff, but that is like it's pretty gory. So I would say those are like the main things to kind of think about. But at the end of the day, like, you're there to have fun and they're there to have fun. So like, it's scary, but it's fun. And I feel like I kind of captured that a lot in the vlogs, because a lot of the time I would get scared and then I would laugh. So that's just kind of the vibe, you know? Every once in a while there would be a moment where I was like, oh, that was scary, but I was never at the point where I was like too scared to do something, you know? I would say though, don't go alone. Like, do it with people who you're gonna have fun with, because you definitely, yeah, like I would never do a house by myself. Like, I feel like that's not fun. But I liked doing a house with Evan because I was able to just like walk through, and I like put my hands on Evan's shoulders, and I was just like, we were just like walk, walk, walk. And that was like at the very beginning of the trip. And then by the end of the trip, I was able to walk without my hands on Evan's shoulders. And then every once in a while I would grab the back of his bag, and we would both laugh because he was like, you were doing so good. And then I'd feel you grab my bag. I was like, yeah, I got a little spooked. But for the most part, it's not terrible. You're not gonna like be so scared. If you like scary stuff, you'll have a blast. Okay, a lot of people asked individually how I thought about all the different rides at Universal and Epic and everything. I'm just gonna give a quick overview. So I think my favorite rides overall, so my favorite rides at Epic Universe, I love Stardust Racers. I thought it was such a fun roller coaster. We rode it once during the day and then once at night. It was so fun at night with all the lights and everything. It was very cool. So I loved doing that one. I thought Stardust Racers was probably like the best roller coaster I've ever been on. Like, if I'm being honest, like it really was just so much fun. I also loved the Ministry of Magic, I think it was called Battle at the Ministry, the Harry Potter ride. Insane. Nothing like I've ever done before. I don't want to give any spoilers to any degree. But let's just say, like, from the very moment where like the ride vehicle pulls up, I was like, oh, what is happening? It was insane. It was so cool. I thought it was amazing. And Monsters Unchained was insane. Again, when you get into that like queue and you walk through the queue, you're like, okay, what the heck is going to happen? What is going to happen? And then the pre-show that happens, you're like, what is going to happen? And then you walk into your ride vehicle and you are like, literally what's about to happen. And then as soon as you kind of like take off from that ride vehicle, it's amazing. It is so cool. I loved it. And like again, I don't want to spoil anything, but like everything about Monsters Unchained is very cool. And then for Islands of Adventure, I would say that I thought Hagrid's was amazing. It's not like the like craziest, fastest, coolest roller coaster you've ever been on, but if you are a Harry Potter fan and you enjoy Harry Potter, you will love that ride. And even if you're not, you can still appreciate the ride because it's fun. There's like a lot of fun stuff to it. There's a lot of like different things that happen in the ride and like stuff like that. And it's very cool because your ride vehicle, you're either sitting up on a motorcycle or you're sitting down in a sidecar. It's a different experience both ways. I got to ride it twice, and I rode on the motorcycle for one and then the sidecar for the other. I will say the motorcycle, I think, is like a lot more fun because it really feels like you're like driving a motorcycle and you don't see anybody else around you other than like obviously the people in front of you. But when you're sitting in the sidecar, you have like the person beside you that is like sitting beside you. So like you can't really see anything to your right. Is that how it is? Yeah. On your right, you can't see anybody. So that's like the only thing I think about the sidecar. But it's still a cool experience, but I would definitely say being up on the motorcycle is like really cool. And then Velocicoaster, I enjoyed it. It was fun. After riding Stardust, I definitely enjoyed Stardust more. I thought Stardust was a lot more smooth, and not that Velocicoaster isn't smooth, but there's just like a lot of moments where you have a lot of airtime on Velocicoaster and you're like, how am I staying in my seat right now? Whereas Stardust, I never felt that. I never was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fall out of my seat. Velocicoaster, there was a few moments where I was like sideways in my seat and I'm like, how on earth am I not falling out of my seat right now? So I didn't love that about Velocicoaster, but it still was one of like my favorite rides that I did. It was very cool, but I definitely like Stardust more than Velocicoaster. And then what was the other one that I liked at Islands of Adventure? Oh, Cat in the Hat. I love Cat in the Hat at Islands of Adventure. And then for Universal, I would say Escape from Gringotts is so cool and so fun. And then I really liked E.T. I thought E.T. was so cool and fun. It was very bizarre, but it was so fun. And then what was the other one at Universal? I will say Universal was probably my least favorite park of all of the parks, just for like rides in general. There is a lot of screen rides at Universal. Universal and Islands of Adventure. That's like their thing, is doing screen rides. So I will say, like, if you're not a screen person, I could see people getting motion sick. I didn't have that issue, and I didn't end up taking Gravol or anything. I brought it with me just in case because I was a little nervous, but it was fine. Like nothing, I never ended up feeling sick, but I could see if you're a motion sick person, I could see how people would get motion sick at that park specifically. I guess going into that, like how I would rate every like park, like if I would do like Epic, Universal, and Islands of Adventure, Epic is like its own entity, in my opinion. I feel like Epic is at a Disney level of theming, immersion, rides, fun. Like Epic is at a Disney level. I would say for me, it's like Disney sits up here for me. All the Disney parks are perfectly in line at the top for me. Then it would go down and it would go to Epic. And Epic is very close to Disney. And then for me, it drops a fair amount. And I would say Islands of Adventure. And then at the very bottom would be Universal. I feel like Islands of Adventure feels a lot more immersive than like Universal does, because there's a lot more like themed lands and like little areas and it feels more themed. Universal is very much like a lot of sound stages, a lot of like big buildings where there's like, you're going into the buildings and you're like watching shows and you're kind of like in a moving vehicle and like you're just watching a screen. So I just feel like as a whole, when you're walking around Universal, it's not super exciting. I don't know. I don't want to not do it any justice, but like in comparing to all the other parks you could go to, I would put it at the bottom. But yeah. Oh, the other ride that I really liked at Universal was the Mummy. I was so scared to do the Mummy. I was like, I'm nervous. People online say that the Mummy's crazy and it's super scary. It's not. It's fun. The Mummy is fun. I really liked it. And I ended up doing it like a few times. Every time, like, because at first I told Evan I don't think I'm going to do it. And he was like, no, you have to. You have to. So we ended up doing it. And then every day he'd be like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I kind of want to do the Mummy. Because it was really fun. A lot of people were asking about characters at Universal. So characters at Universal is pretty cool where they're just like out and you can kind of just like go up to them. There's never really lines for anybody, I found, other than at Epic. Epic, there was like a little bit more of like a line like to meet Toothless, for example. But every other character, it's like you kind of just go up and you meet them and there's barely any lines and you kind of just go up, snap a picture and like leave. The only characters that we met was the Grinch and the Lorax. And that was the only one I met because they literally had just come out. There was nobody there. And I was like, sure, I'll just go snap a picture with them. It's definitely a different experience than when you're at Disney. But yeah, so I'm not really a character person anyway. So I'm not the best person to ask about characters, but that's kind of like the difference. Okay. A lot of people were asking if a Universal trip is worth it if you only wanted to do the Harry Potter attractions. I think it's so hard to let people know if something's worth it or not because a lot of people obviously value their money differently. It is expensive to do one day at Universal and get the park hopper because if you want to just do Harry Potter, you have to get a park hopper because there is Harry Potter at both Islands of Adventure and Universal and you want to be able to take the train. I think 100% you should do that. Is it worth it? It's hard to say. I think if you're a huge Harry Potter fan and you've never done it before, I think you definitely should do it at least once in your life. And like 100% you could fill your day just doing the Harry Potter stuff. But it's definitely it's definitely more of like, it's a little bit more of a cost to really think about, but I think it's very fun. I think you could fill your day just doing the Harry Potter stuff. I think it's great. So that's my take on it. Yeah, that's like basically it for questions that I had. If there's any other like specific questions that you have, please send me a message on either Instagram, or you can kind of like comment them down below and I'll try my best to answer them. But yeah, that's like basically it. I did want to end this video though with something different than I've ever really done before, which is I wanted to just kind of give a quick little tidbit of our next trip. So normally whenever I come back from a trip, people are always asking like, when's your next trip? When's your next trip? And since this trip that I went on was very like last minute, it was something that kind of just got thrown in. We actually already have a trip booked for Disney in the very few coming months. So I kind of just wanted to quickly throw it in here that we do have a Disney trip booked. It is a very special trip because it is a very exciting first for both Austin and I. And I'm really excited. I'm not going to give a whole lot of details because I do want to save some that's like a little bit closer to, but I will say we will be going within the next 6 months. We will be going and staying at a new hotel that we've never stayed at before. This is also going to be a trip revolving around Run Disney, which is very exciting. And yeah, I am doing a single Run Disney race and Austin is doing a few Run Disney races. So if you follow us on Instagram, especially if you follow Austin, if you follow he is my Austin. If you follow my husband, Austin, he is at Magically Aussie on Instagram. He has been really in his running era recently, and that's not for any reason other than the fact that he has signed up to do a handful of Run Disney races in the very near months. It feels very near. It's not super close, but like I said, it's within the next 6 months and it is coming quickly, truthfully. So yeah, that is my announcement for you all. Yeah, that's basically it. I really just wanted to kind of mention it because I feel like there's going to be a lot more talk about like training for races and like upcoming races. So it just makes the most sense, I think, for me to kind of mention it now so that you guys aren't like, why all of a sudden are these guys like getting into running and like just running a lot and like going to the gym a lot more and whatever. It's because there's a reason and we're kind of like leading up to that reason. So yeah, but again, I don't want to give away too many details. But yeah, anyways, okay. I'm really excited and I feel like that was like just the most like bizarre way to kind of like announce a trip. But if you hear me talking about it in the next few months, that is why. And I'm really excited and I hope you guys are excited too. So this is also a really exciting one for Oz because like obviously he hasn't been since February, so it's going to be in the next 6 months. So he's excited because he will only have been, a year between his trips basically. So yeah. Anyways, okay, that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Again, if you have any other questions about this last trip or any trips in general, just let me know. And yeah, anyways, I love you guys so much and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.